Welcome to the Race and Lanes podcast. I am your host, Rico Muhammad. Tonight, we're going to affectionately dub this show the Back to Basics podcast. It's been a little while since we've had a chance to go back and talk about just the fundamentals of owning your own carrier, being your own carrier, owning your own business as a smaller guy, and just want to make sure that we are covering different topics to help make sure that you are being able to sustain yourself through this tough time period that we're going through in the industry. I think a lot of times we get disillusioned and get off into other things. We always get staring at the shiny object, and sometimes the best and most tried and true way to make sure that you are able to get through tough times is just being able to focus on the basic fundamentals. And when we say basic fundamentals, we mean the things like make sure that you are controlling your costs, making sure that you are doing the things that you can do to develop relationships so that you can have a better opportunity at better rates, better opportunity to be able to continue to run your company in the black and kind of stay out of the red. So that's kind of what today's episode is going to be surrounded by. So if you guys would do us a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe to the show. It helps us out to get to a broader algorithm into the YouTube universe. And also, if you find anything that we say or talk about tonight informative, and you think someone could benefit from this information, by all means, please share the show. So like, share, and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a dime. But we would all be grateful if you would do so. And with that being said, I want to go ahead and welcome in my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Chuck, good evening. How are you?
Oh, we're doing great, Rico. I'm excited to do this podcast with you because, it's you and me again, and back to the basics, and it is back to the basics. We're going to bring it back to where we started from many years ago, just because it's time to come back to the basics and regroup and figure how we're going to make it through these tough times. And they're not going to get better very quickly. Let's face it. Maybe we'll get a pass. But I don't think so. So we just have to learn to navigate in these waters in this business.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch bases on, the main thing that helps us out and a direct correlation that gets us a little bit more money back in our pocket is making sure that we're watching our fuel economy. If we can increase our fuel economy, whether it be by making subtle improvements to our equipment or just the basic thing, lifting that right foot up off that pedal a little bit more and slowing down and going just a little bit slower so that you're not blowing as much of your profits out the stack as you can to kind of get that money back to your bottom line. We want to, I guess that's a good place for us to start. What can you share with us about, from yourself owning a nice size fleet at the time and just watching the numbers and everything when it comes to having and getting good fuel mileage? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, fuel is one of the, first of all, historically, it's been fuel and labor have been two of the biggest costs with operating a fleet. There's not a lot you can do with labor because if you have a driver on your truck or you're driving your own truck, you still have to pay yourself because you still, your children and your family still has to eat. So there's not much you can do. You got to have some money coming in. And why are we doing this if it's not for money? But the fuel is so important. And you have to figure out where the sweet spot on your truck is, because there'll be some listeners out there that the way their trucks are geared, there'll be the optimum mileage will be found when they're driving 63 miles an hour, others maybe 58 miles an hour. There may be some at 68 miles an hour, depending on how these trucks are geared. But that is so important to find out. And then once you find out where the sweet spot is, you gotta stick with it, because the dollars, and I know fuel's come down in price a little bit, but so have freight rates. So it's all, it all kind of goes hand in hand. So, even if fuel were to go down to $1.50 a gallon, mark my words, freight rates will tumble down to something even more ridiculous than they are now. So you do have to be disciplined and run your truck at the sweet spot, because it's just costing you thousands of dollars. And I mean, like, it can be running you that extra 2-3 miles an hour can be running you as much as $15,000 a year.
Another thing that goes in line with slowing down, and when we're talking about back to basics, one of the first things I remember when I first got out here and when I was going through CDL school, they talked so much about it at the time, and I kind of missed the mark on why was it so important at the time. But trip planning, making sure that you're taking the time to sit down when you know what you're getting ready to get into with your trip planning, to tie that into fuel mileage, because then there's so much technology out there available that you can be able to map out where your fuel stops are, and setting yourself up to be able to buy and purchase fuel at the best cost possible. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about back to basics, we're talking about things that are going to be a direct correlation to your bottom line to help you be as profitable as you possibly can at the end of the day. And finding the best place to buy fuel, whether you have a discount card through, we affectionately love to deal with Nastics and their QPN fuel program over here. But if you have a company, if you're leased onto a carrier and they have a network, making sure that you're buying your fuel in network and that you're getting the best possible price on your route as you possibly can is critically important to making sure that you're maximizing your profitability.
Rico, I want to just add something to that. Some of the men and women out there that have gotten into the industry within the last couple of years that don't have a ton of experience, that may end up in places where they normally don't go, where they think that there's huge bargains on fuel because they'll see, and I'm going to use this one as a great example, Oregon. If you travel through Oregon, when you buy fuel at the pump, it is dirt cheap. But where they get you is on the road tax. So, anytime I ever sent trucks to Oregon, I always told our drivers, don't buy fuel there. This is owner operators too. And they had a real hard time understanding this. But, I would say, if you guys buy fuel there, you're going to have to pay the road tax and fuel tax on that fuel. And it's going to be a lot more money than buying fuel, even in California. So just know, and come back again to trip planning. Well, of course, if you've got to run, from California, northern or southern California up to Seattle, you're going through Oregon, but plan your trip accordingly. And the other thing you can do with as far as trip planning that I want to add, take your time when you get that dispatch, find out what the route is that's got the least hills, perhaps, with your truck. A lot of trucks don't do well on hills. And maybe there's one route you can take that may be 20 miles longer, but doesn't have any hills, or it has, less climbs. That may save you money as well. And this is, Rico, you and I used to say this all the time. All that we are, if we operate trucks, we are accountants. We're glorified accountants.
Right.
And there's so much money coming in and there's so much money coming out of our accounts. And our job as accountants is to see how much of that money we can keep in our pockets. That's our job.
Not about how much you make, it's about how much you can keep.
Exactly. And you get to keep money by doing things right and doing things in a cost-effective manner. That translates right into your bottom line. And there is money to be saved all over the place. Another thing for getting fuel mileage, for God's sakes, check your tire pressure.
Yep.
And I just heard somebody just backed up what I've been saying all along. I was listening to a tire expert on Sirius XM this last week, and he said, if you kick your tires, all you're getting is a sore toe. And this is a tire expert. So, ladies and gentlemen, quit kicking your tires. All right. We don't want anybody to get a sore toe, number one. Number two, it doesn't really do anything. You want to check that tire pressure. Make sure your tire pressure is correct for the areas you're running. Make sure that you inflate them and you check your inflation all the time. It's so important for profitability. First, for fuel mileage. Secondly, if you do have a tire that's got a slow leak, you damn well want to know about it so you can get onto it right away and get it fixed, because it's going to cost, the tire's going to go, and tires are expensive. You know, this is a whole new world of buying tires now. Used to be able to get good deals, not anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely the truth there. Also, one of the critical components, I wanted to kind of talk about this as well, because now, Chuck, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on, but I want you to be able to speak to the relationship aspect of negotiating rates and dealing with brokers, because right now we're in an environment where a lot of times, if you're working the spot market, especially, a lot of brokers are just not willing to negotiate very much at all. We have a lot of carriers in the market right now, and I told you about a story. I guess I can repeat it now because I don't know the gentleman's name, but I was picking up a load not far from where I live, and I was only going about 29 miles with the load. It was making $500 on about 29 miles.
Good money.
Wasn't a bad deal. But there was another driver that was picking up, was in Canton, Georgia, where we were picking up at. It was at a chicken plant. And I was going 29 miles across the state over here to deliver. And he was going all the way out to San Antonio, Texas. And I wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't shown it to me. He showed me his rate confirmation. He was only getting $1,300 to take a refrigerated load from Georgia all the way to San Antonio, Texas. That's over 1,000-mile run. I don't know how in the hell anybody can operate at a profit unless he had a killer load waiting for him in San Antonio. Man, that's crazy. But unfortunately, now with the loads that are out there and dealing on the spot market, brokers are just posting rates and they're not really willing to negotiate much at all. I think that you can kind of break that conundrum if you deal with the broker and you got somewhat of a relationship to be able to get into that conversation. I think that if they are somewhat familiar with you and you build a little rapport, that can open up the lines for you to be able to begin the negotiation. However, here lately with some, I've noticed myself when I call on a load that I don't have a relationship with that particular broker, there's very little that I can do to kind of get into a whole spiel of even trying to open up the subject of negotiating the rate. So if you could, Chuck, let's talk a little bit about relationship building and how we can maybe soften that blow and make that cold call, so to speak, with whether it be a broker or a shipper, and maybe warm that up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I wrote the book on freight brokerage up in Canada. I was doing this almost 50 years ago, and in 1978, I actually started brokering some loads, and then we formed Traffics in '79. So doing it a long time. So you have two things. Number one, you have to remember that in today's world, the shippers they've got more data than they've ever had. So they know how much, especially your volume shippers, your large volume shippers that are playing the spot game, and your small shippers, where the owner of the company or the general manager is arranging for freight with brokers. So what they're doing is they find out what the going rate is. They call the broker and they say, listen, I've got a load going from Canton, Georgia to San Antonio, and I hear the rate is, $1,400 right now. Get me a truck. And that's what I'm willing to pay. And those are your transactional customers. And with those customers, when you become when you become the carrier in that equation, you are not going to make any money, and there's not a lot of room for negotiation. And I wouldn't waste my time with anything, with any of those deals, like your the fellow that you met that was willing to run for a dollar, under $1.30 a mile. That is, unless he has one hell of a great load coming back from San Antonio, which I kind of doubt, or Texas. I doubt it in this market that he's got a $4 a mile load coming back, but you almost need that. So that is where you have a relationship with a small group of brokers, and you are their guy. You're their go-to guy when they want something done. And if you could do that, then you can negotiate, because now all of a sudden you've got something to negotiate with. You're not just negotiating on price, because in this market, just like that great market that we lived through, where we got to hold the gun on the shippers and on the brokers. Now basically the shippers are holding the gun to everybody.
Right.
There are some brokers that do take advantage. There's no two doubts about it. And there are sometimes where a broker does make a lot of money on a shipment. There's no, I can tell you that for a fact. The brokers have to make money on those shipments. They have to make those 20 and 30% profit margins on some of those shipments in order to balance out for the ones that they have to lose money on in order to keep the customer. And that happens all the time, or you have to move dozens and dozens of loads at cost in order to keep a certain lane. That happens. So you have to have that. But getting back to it, you need to have those relationships with a handful of brokers, because if you're only one truck, you can't deal all the time with more than a half a dozen brokers at the very most. And again, if you can, then try to pick one lane, okay, or two lanes, and just work those. We've said it 1,000 times. The people that took our advice are not hurting. And I'm going to put it out there again. It's harder now. Pick a lane. It's
Right.
still possible. Become an expert in something. I remember one of my good friends took a business course and came back, and he said, what I learned from the course was specialize in something. You got to, even if you are, and he owned a transmission shop, but he had to find a niche within the transmission business, and it was just car transmissions. But he found a niche, and it was a warranty that he came up with, and he was able to make his transmission shop into the largest volume auto transmission repair shop in North America, because he found a niche. One shop. He didn't have several locations. So it's available. Just niches make riches, okay? Niches make riches. And I have a good friend of mine that ran a business. He built a business from the time he was 16 with one truck. By the time he sold it, 48 or 50, I think he had 200 or 300, 4 terminals, everything paid for, and all he hauled was alcoholic beverages. So either pick a commodity, pick a lane, one or the other, and just do that, and you should be able to make it through. And now more than ever, I think you've got to, like that man that went 1,000 miles for $1,300. He can't do that very often, because he's going to lose his truck, even if it's paid for. When he needs tires, or he needs brakes, or when he needs that engine job, which costs thousands, he's not going to have the money, because by the time he finishes paying for his fuel and his road taxes and his tolls, he didn't make 1 cent for his labor. Who the heck wants to work for free?
Right. Right. And I think that's it's in these tough times, it's really hard to tell someone, you can't do that. And this is the definition of saying no to cheap freight. Cheap freight is whatever is the freight that you can't turn a profit on. If you're not being profitable, that's my definition of it, at least. If it's not being profitable, then that's cheap freight. Now, sometimes, like I say, in order to reposition your equipment or whatever, or if you've already done a lot, everybody knows or everybody should know, if you take a load into Florida, that you got to get a premium to go into Florida.
Yeah.
Because you know you're not coming out of there. You know you're probably going to end up bouncing back all the way back up to Georgia to find a load, or
Yep.
if you do get a load out of Florida, you're taking that thing. It's not paying very much. It might cover a portion of the fuel to get out of Florida. So you want to make sure that you are doing the things that are going to be able to keep keep your trucking company in the black, not operating at somewhat of a profit, not just staying really close to the margin. And the margins are razor thin nowadays, with the cost of service, the cost of parts, the cost of fuel, the cost of insurance. It goes on and on and on. And now it might be a really great time to make sure that you sit back down with your spreadsheet and go back over your we talked about being accountants, but it's time to go back over your cost per mile and your cost of operations. It's time to really make sure that you drill down on those numbers, and that you have those numbers really drilled into baked into your rates, so that it makes it easier for you to kind of stay in the black.
Well, if your rates are not a reflection of your cost and your profitability, then what are you doing this for? You couldn't sell, my God, you couldn't sell refrigerators or dishwashers, buy them for $50 and sell them for 20. Come on, it's the exact same thing. There's no magic here, Rico.
Right.
And how much, what can you do to get a longer lifespan out of your brakes? Every single penny counts. That's what's so important right now. Unfortunately, we are dealing with pennies, and we always did, but people aren't used to it because we just came out of this amazing period that was unlike anything we've ever seen.
Right. I think, and the thing about it is, I'm not sure with a lot of people that are the new people that came into the industry. I'm not sure what's going on. So that's why everybody is like, okay, we need a culling of the herd, because you got a lot of people out here that are accepting these basement dweller rates, and it's. I think that's what's given the leeway for people to just be able to kind of push things on us with an iron fist, so to speak. And like I say, it takes away the negotiation factor. But the way that I found that I try to combat that is like I say, try my best to build a relationship. Try to when I'm talking with brokers, to give them the value proposition of my value proposition is consistency. I'm consistently, like we said, I'm consistently running this lane, so I have capacity to offer on a regular basis throughout the week, and I know this lane. So you can shoot a number out at me, and yeah, you might be able to find somebody that'll take that low number every now and again. But if you want someone that's going to be able to service you and your customer on a consistent basis and do a good job, and I make sure that I'm communicating with you through the whole steps of the process. That's not bottom basement dweller rates right there. I'm not gonna participate in the race to the bottom.
You shouldn't, because why would you operate your truck and put miles on your truck when you're not getting paid for it? You may as well take your truck and just go drive the interstate and go for a drive with an empty wagon. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
What is the point of picking up a load for $1.30 a mile going to Texas? Because you want to go to Texas, get on a damn plane if you really want to go.
Right.
Don't put the miles on your truck. Go to Texas. Go rent a hotel and go sightseeing. But I didn't think we're sightseers here. We're talking about commerce. We're talking about making money. And I realized we have a lot of people, not their fault. They're not educated in how this works, and they're hanging on for dear life. And people get this thing, because I've been there myself, Rico, where you think, well, if I throw enough crap against the wall, some of it is going to stick. It doesn't. Okay. None of it is going to. You can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's insanity.
let's talk a little bit as well, Chuck, if you can shed some light on mindset. Because I think a lot of times, we talk about all these other different subjects, but I think having the mindset of a business owner, owning your own business, you know, the type of mindset that you need to have to make sure that because it's sometimes, as they say, it gets lonely at the top, and a lot of times it's not. As a single operator or whatever, there are not really a lot of people that are your peers, so to speak, that you may have in your direct circle. And as they say, sometimes it gets lonely at the top or whatever.
Oh, does it ever? Number one, it's very lonely at the top. Number two, the climb to the top is possible, doable, attainable. It's actually fun. Um, Staying at the top is next to impossible because you're right at the pinnacle of that mountain on one foot, and there's hungry wolves they're nipping at your heels trying to pull you off that mountain. So that's be prepared for that part, but you need a certain mindset. It is very important to think like a business owner, and that's why I find an awful lot of new businesses fail, is because the ownership does not have the proper mindset. They have no idea how they need to behave in order to be successful. So you have to have a clear goal in mind. That's number one. You have to set your sight on what you want to attain. And you have to make a commitment to yourself and to your business and to your family. This is number one. Okay. It's great to say family's number one, and we all say it, but we all know it when we run a business and a successful business that the family is sacrificed quite often.
Absolutely.
In order to meet the goals of that business, because that's how you feed that family. So you have to be willing to make those sacrifices when that customer calls you on a Saturday night and says to you, Rico, I've got a load. Can you load tonight? Because I gave it to the guy for $1.30 a mile and he hasn't shown yet. And we've got a customer, and I will pay you. I'll pay you whatever you need to move that load because it's got to go. Those are opportunities. And those opportunities will come to everybody out there at some point, especially when you're dealing with a smaller number of brokers. And those things that you do for people usually are never forgotten. Okay. And they will keep giving you business forever as long as you do a good job when you do things like that. But you've got to be willing to be their go-to guy. And their go-to guy does not mean that you close up on Friday night at 4:30 and you shut your phone off and you don't turn it on until Monday. If you do that, well, you know what? At best, you might make a living, but you're never going to be successful. You've got to be willing to sleep with that telephone, and when that customer calls, be able to solve their problem. And the customer in this case is, in most cases, it is a load broker, but it could be a direct shipper. But you've got to be willing. We are in the service business, okay? And unfortunately, we're at the low end of the service business because there's so many of us. So you've got to be willing to do whatever it takes and set those goals and guidelines. That, I remember many, many, many years ago, I took an audio course from a man named Dennis Waitley, and he was a psychologist for several of the U.S. presidents and the astronauts. And there's an old expression: when the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. And I was ready. And I had a Sony Walkman. I found these tapes in my office that a former business partner of mine had bought, never even opened. And I took up running because my business was in trouble at the time. It needed some work. And he said something that was profound, which I will share with our listeners. Winners make it happen. Losers let it happen.
That's powerful.
It is. And that got me through one of the roughest times I had ever been through. I was in real deep doo doo, and I got through, and I turned that thing right around. And I was 27 or 28 years old, and that was with sheer willpower and guts, and I pulled a brilliant maneuver and saved everything.
So, so staying along those lines, and now with the technology and everything that we got with the audibles and different things of that nature, when we're talking about mindset, how important is it to make sure that you're feeding your mind the right material to keep you in a positive mind state? Because with all the negativity that is going on out there in the world, with all the things there are to complain about, but making sure that you're kind of keeping a clear mind and keeping your mind focused on the goals and the commitments that you've already set out. What are some things that or do you have any books that you can recommend along those lines?
You know what? Some of them are pretty basic. I've got a lot of stuff that I've read and stuff I've listened to. One of the most powerful teachers I've had in my life is a gentleman by the name of Anthony Robbins. He has been around for Anthony Robbins has been around since the late 80s, I think,
Yeah.
maybe even earlier, mid 80s. He's still out there. He's still doing great stuff. And rather than listening to a bunch of jibber jabber on the radio, your favorite band or whatever, and Sirius XM is a great tool. They've got some great stuff out there to help keep you educated. And besides for that, I would say Anthony Robbins is probably the best. There's also another old one. There's a couple old ones I want to share with you. One of them is a gentleman by the name of Harvey McKay, and he was a guy from Topeka, Kansas, that bought the unsexiest business I ever heard of. It was an envelope company that he bought when he graduated from university, and he turned it into a huge success by learning how to market. And he learned how to market by learning how to deal with people. And he's got something in there in his book. This book I read it about 40 years ago, and it helped set the pace for my business. And I think it's called the McKay 45. And it was the 45 things that you should know about your customer. So when you are talking and you're making these relationships with load brokers or direct customers, get to know them personally. Okay. Find out about them. Find out, did that person, were they in the military? What about their family? Do their kids play sports? When's their birthday? All these things. When it's going to be their birthday, send them a birthday card. It costs a couple dollars. Go to the dollar store and buy some birthday cards. When you find out that if somebody says, listen, my mom is really ill, call every day and say, how's your mom? Okay.
Right.
Things like this, that you've got to get to the personal side of things. Now, right now, in the world we live in,
and don't misconstrue. I just want to interject for a second, Chuck. And don't misconstrue that as ass kissing.
Yeah.
It's a human nature part of showing genuine concern. If you show genuine concern, because people can pick up on fake, people can pick up on fake. But if you're showing a little bit of genuine concern for your fellow man, then that comes across and that resonates with people.
100%. And big business has worked feverishly the last 15, 20 years to take the human element out of the whole business equation.
That's where the whole driverless truck and AI comes in.
You got it. But the truth of the matter is, when everything else fails, and when Uber Freight does not dispatch a truck on Friday afternoon for that hot load, it's the human relationship that saves the day. So don't forget that. Don't walk around saying, "Oh, nobody cares about people anymore." People still care about people. Get to know your customers. You know, get to know. And Harvey McKay said it beautifully. If you know that your customer is a sports fan and you know that his Atlanta Braves, is that the right team, Rico?
Right.
I'm not.
That's
uh,
right.
if you know that his beloved Atlanta Braves won a game last night, just give him a call. Leave a message or send him a text or however you communicate and say, "Hey, great news about your Braves." Do you think that won't put a smile on that man or woman's
Right.
face? Things like that, guys. This isn't rocket science.
Just
You
takes a little bit more effort. It takes a little bit more effort.
Yes, but you're sitting there anyways. It takes a minute. While the truck is being fueled up, you're checking your emails, you're checking things, and you take that. Oh my God, this happened. Well, you know what? There was a flood in that town. That's where Jim Gordon's from. I better send him a note, make sure he's okay. That goes a million miles. That's how you're going to get that call, not the guy down the road, because he doesn't give a darn.
And just to get I don't know, I don't want to dive into too much controversy here, Chuck, but I shared a story with you. I shared a story with you on Instagram about a young lady she was complaining about, and she was giving FUs out to whoever it was that reported her
Oh,
because she got fired from a trucking company for creating content and I'm going to use the air quotes content. And her definition of content, of course, lady, I got 4 daughters, and ladies, have some, whatever you want to do. But I'll say it like this: I wouldn't want my company associated if I had an employee. I wouldn't want my company associated if I had a young lady out showing, uh, prancing around, showing everything that she has to offer. When I mean what she has to offer, without barely having any clothes on. In my company, I wouldn't want my company represented that way.
no.
And sometimes I know we're living in the age of social media and stuff like that. I think someone said that we're living in a generation that doesn't know what it's like to be in a world without social media. And all attention ain't good attention, regardless of what they may tell you.
100%. Yes, you are. When you own a company, whether you own one truck or you are, you're the Schneiders from Schneider Transport, it doesn't matter. You and your team are the face of the company. You are the brand. Okay.
Right.
And when you're thinking of doing something stupid, imagine opening up a bottle of Coca-Cola, taking a swig out of it, and there's a cigarette butt in it. Because that's what you are doing to your brand when you stand in front of your truck and you start making political or religious statements or anything else that's controversial. You don't do it. Take a page out of companies like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. They all started out with one person behind a desk or behind a wheel or behind something. Okay.
Right.
Coca-Cola started out where you live in Atlanta somewhere with a
Yep.
pharmacist concocting some sort of a cough medicine or something. But it started one person, and just keep that in mind when you're putting yourself out there, and it includes when you're driving down the road. Make sure your truck looks half decent. Make sure you look half decent because you are your company.
Yeah, that's another thing. Unfortunately, when we talk about back to basics too, and I'm not trying to harp on. I'm gonna say this across the board, whether you're male or female, make sure you got on. You're conducting business. You're conducting business transactions. Make sure that you look professional. For guys, stop walking around with your, looking like you a slob with your sweatpants and shirts that not fitting properly or hanging off of you, and your flip flops. Put on some because for one, we're operating in a heavy machinery society. So you may have to go on a dock, and of course, you can't be going on people's dock or loading areas with open-toed shoes on and things of that nature. So across the board, from men to women, you know, you we understand what proper what they say, the PPE, whatever it is for our industry. We know what we need to be having on: proper protection equipment. We know the stuff that we need to be having on: at least a pair of boots, um, normally some pants, and a clean shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
I, I've always recommended, especially if you got your own company, it doesn't cost much money to go get your shirt brand, go get your company branded, go get your company logo or something put on your shirt. I don't have mine on today on the podcast, but I got a few of them.
I agree.
Follow. I say follow the model of a UPS, of a bigger trucking company, that because uniforms, you create a uniform for yourself and for your company. If you're going to be out in the public eye, look professional, look presentable, look clean. That's number one thing. Ladies, I understand that you want to you don't want to necessarily lose your feminine touch, but there's a time and a place for everything. And I've seen some ladies go out here that whoo, I don't know if you're driving a truck or you coming from a stripper pole. I mean,
But you know what, Rico? It's funny. I have seen many women come into our terminal. Some worked for us through the years. Other ones, were delivering, that were attired properly. They looked professional.
yes, yes,
They looked 100% professional. And I have to tell you, I've had personal experiences both with law enforcement, customs, customers, all sorts of things where, because I look professional, I got away with stuff.
it helps. It
It,
helps more than
you
what
have one chance to make a first
first
impression.
impression.
Okay. When remember, number one, when you're driving over that scale and your truck is filthy dirty and you've got papers strewn all over your dashboard and your truck's got stuff hanging, you're getting pulled in. When you get out of that truck and you look like you haven't shaved in a month, you haven't had a bath in 2 months, you haven't changed your clothes in 3 months, they're not going to just kick you out because you smell bad.
Yeah, that's another one I got to talk about for a second, Chuck.
Good.
Goodness gracious, I was in the truck stop and I'm walking by, and you get the congregation of drivers that are around telling war stories or whatever, and ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, they give you free showers when you fuel up. Please use them.
Yes.
It makes no sense. No one should be able to just by walking by within 3 feet of you should be able to smell you. That is man, that's disgusting.
You know what? I'll never forget. I had a driver that he was a good driver, but he didn't believe in showering, and he brought his truck in for service. The Polish mechanic we had, Jerry, who was a brilliant mechanic, a little bit temperamental, but he was a genius. He really was trained in the old country. And I'll never forget. He would lose his temper over things that somebody damaging equipment. He'd get very upset. And I remember him coming into my office, threw the keys on my desk to this driver's truck, and he said, "Boss, you service that truck and you put the truck into the shop because I no do it. It smelled too bad. You no pay me enough for this." There was no reason. Okay. There just wasn't any reason. I had to talk to the driver and say, "Listen, the mechanic doesn't want to work on your truck. It reeks. I put it into the shop myself. I had to have the windows open. Come on, man. We'll get the truck cleaned. You start showering."
Yeah, that's yeah, no man, listen. I can't stress that hard enough, man. Proper hygiene.
Yes, it's important. You walk on a shipper's dock, or you walk in. If you walk into a scale and you smell real bad, don't think they're just going to kick you out without a ticket. They'll kick you out, but they're going to get their money's worth because you made them suffer. They'll probably take you out. They'll probably go out and do a long, long check on your truck, and they'll find all sorts of things. What for? Come on.
Yeah, so look, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna revisit this subject and we're gonna come back to it. If you guys got some things that you want to add to our back to basics, by all means, drop us a line, share it with us in a comment. And also give us some homework, give us some couple of assignments. If you would like for us, give us some different things that you would like for us to tackle on future shows, so that we can begin to maybe go out and see if we can find more guests to bring on board for you guys, to kind of help go into different subjects and things of that nature. We always enjoy trying to bring you guys a little bit of a different take on the industry. We want to try to make sure that we're giving you actionable information that is real world information that you can use, not and practical advice that you can use, not nothing too much pie in the sky, nothing like that. We don't want to be too grandiose, but we want to make sure that we're doing bringing you guys some real good information, really good content that you can actually use on a day-to-day basis to kind of improve your operations. That's the whole purpose of the show. So by all means, give us some assignments that we can try to work out and figure out some things that bring some more value to the podcast. Chuck, anything you want to say as a closing remark before we get out of here?
Just, we know these are tough times, ladies and gentlemen, and we can make it through. Just work smarter, not harder. Make sure you're loading with profit in mind. And again, pick goals. You have to set goals. And if I can just have 2 minutes of this, the best goal setting I've ever exercised, I ever came from Anthony Robbins. And Anthony Robbins said, go into a room all alone, or you can do it in your bunk and with nobody around when you have lots of time, and pick a 6-week goal, 4 or 6 week goal. Okay. What you're going to do. Then pick a 12-week goal and keep going on for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. Once you get past 2 years, then break it down to, a 30-month goal, 36-month goal, and just set those goals and attain those goals. Work hard at making sure that you reach those goals, and you will be successful. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
Well, my friend Chuck is getting ready to leave us for a little while. He's going to be on a little bit of hiatus. So I don't know if he want to back up his email with giving it out just yet.
Yeah, you know what? I may have. I'm going down under to Australia, and I'm back, and we're taping a couple shows here, just so we have some content. I'm back around the 21st, so it'll probably be towards the end of the month till I'm back. So I'm really gone for live for a month. So if anybody wants to send me an email, it's chucksnow280@outlook.com. And I will try to call you back as soon as I can, or answer your email if I can. I'm actually looking forward to a lot of things in Australia. One of them is to see new cab over trucks. I can't wait.
I'm sure you're going to see some really nice stuff down there.
Oh yeah, I'll send some pictures, and maybe you can post them, Rico.
All right, sounds like a plan. Well, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we want you guys to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. God willing, we'll talk to you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night. Keep it in.
Watch you on the flip flop.